was stolen, and I suspect a great many Democrats still think 2004 and 2000 were stolen as well. So this is a problem that has plagued both parties, the idea that they don't believe the outcome of elections, and the way we...
I'd like to clarify that point, though, as I just want to say, there were people in 2004 that thought voter suppression tactics were taking place in this state, which could still be a true statement, but what never happened after 2004 was an insurrection at the Capitol.
In today's video, Ashley Allison destroys Scott Jennings on Newsnight with Abby Phillip as a heated debate erupts over the SAVE Act and election rules. When Scott Jennings tries to silence Ashley Allison, she fires back with facts about millions of legal voters. So let's dive in and watch how Ashley Allison shuts down Scott Jennings on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
Look, so much of this is politics. It is. This is an election year. The digital fundraising content is coming out of the Democrats right now. These buzzwords, this is what people on both sides of the aisle do. This is an election year. It's a midterm election year. This is about ginning up the base, and that's exactly what
you're a practitioner of politics, campaigns. If you, realistically, I mean, nationwide, show me your birth certificate or a passport in order to vote before the next presidential election, you really think that that's not going to have an impact on Republicans as well as Democrats?
We should all care about election security. We should all care about voter rolls being purged and dead people being pulled off.
Yeah.
We should all care about these things.
Yeah.
Even if Republicans are impacted by it.
We also should all care that when you lose an election, you acknowledge it, you accept it, and you move on, and you don't hold this fight 6 years later. But we aren't here, which is why we have the SAVE Act. And when you look at data, when I was in law school, my first summer, I remember working at the Brennan Center. It was my first internship in law school. And I remember asking someone who is now a circuit court judge and saying, why are we fighting this one case? Because it actually doesn't determine the outcome of an election. And she says, because every single vote matters if you have the right to vote. So Democrats and Republicans want all people who are eligible and legal to vote to actually be able to vote. What we don't want is that there are higher benchmarks for some people to be able to vote and some people not to be able to vote. The SAVE Act is unnecessary. The reason why Donald Trump is doing that is a tactic because y'all are on shaky ground right now for these midterms. The public, maybe people are with you 8 to 10 on voter ID, but they are not with you 8 to 10 on immigration right now, which is what you want on 2024. So there are tactics that are being deployed right here that are also political on the Republican side, and we can't just play blind to
But let's not conflate the SAVE Act with voter fraud, right? I mean, that's what's sort of happening now, right? Is these ridiculous claims about the 2020 election and voter fraud with a separate issue, which is a serious, legitimate debate about the SAVE Act, right? And every time Donald Trump says something that is incredibly excessive or 15 places that we need to nationalize the elections, the response is, well, he was talking about the SAVE Act. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the SAVE Act.
Yes.
So the point is that, like, let's debate the SAVE Act. Let's have a serious conversation about it. I think there are arguments for and against it, but it has nothing to do with nationalizing elections or voter fraud in Georgia.
Yeah, there's a desire to, as I like to say, launder Donald Trump's words. But I think it also is kind of an insult to the intelligence of the American people who see and hear what he is saying and take him at his word.
A big thing that often gets lost in this is scale. Research around the SAVE Act shows this isn't just about tightening rules. It could fundamentally change who can realistically participate in elections. Analyses have found more than 21 million US citizens don't have easy access to documents like passports or birth certificates, and requirements to show them in person could hit rural voters especially hard because of travel barriers. That matters because voter access isn't theoretical. Millions of regular active voters could run into new obstacles even if they voted for years. Another reality is that non-citizen voting, the issue these laws are supposedly targeting, is already extremely rare historically, while document barriers are very real. Past research has found only a tiny number of fraud cases compared to billions of ballots cast over decades. Meanwhile, policy analysts warn that proof of citizenship rules don't just affect one party. Surveys suggest people lacking easy access to documents are spread across political groups, meaning restrictions don't neatly land on one side. They just reduce overall participation. What strengthens Abby Phillip and Ashley Allison's broader point is that election trust is tied to accessibility and transparency together. When rules become complex or inconsistent across states, it can increase confusion and reduce turnout even among eligible voters. Experts warn that eliminating online or mail registration and forcing in-person documentation could disrupt systems millions already rely on. That's why debates like this aren't just partisan messaging. They're really about how easy or hard it is for ordinary citizens to stay part of democracy.
And one other thing, I mean, I just want to play this. This is Caroline Levitt. She was asked about Steve Bannon's calls for Trump to deploy ICE, and I want you to listen to what she had to say.
Steve Bannon recently said, quote, "We're going to have ICE surround the polls come November." Is that something that the president is considering?
That's not something I've ever heard the president consider, no.
You can guarantee to the American public that ICE will not be around polling locations or voting locations in November?
I can't guarantee that an ICE agent won't be around a polling location in November. I mean, that's frankly a very silly hypothetical question. But what I can tell you is I haven't heard the president discuss any formal plans to put ICE outside of polling locations. It's a disingenuous question.
So, Steve, those are Steve Bannon's comments that she was asked about. But the other part of the context is that Trump himself said earlier this week that he believes that federal agents should be overseeing the votes and counting the votes. So why can't the White House be, unequivocal about what the Constitution says about who runs elections in this country?
Well, she was pretty clear. She's never heard the president say he wants to put ICE agents at polling locations. I think what she was also saying is, can I guarantee one's not going to be driving by one of the thousands upon thousands of polling locations on a particular day? No, I couldn't guarantee that. But there's obviously no plan to deploy ICE agents. The diffused nature of our election system is a good thing. It generally leads to security. That doesn't mean, though, that there aren't already federal hooks into the elections. The Voter Registration Act requires states to try to keep their voter rolls clean. Many of them do not. The Help America Vote Act does the same thing. So there are already some federal requirements on states to try to engage in some best practices. Right. For what purpose? To give people confidence that the election is running fairly. Now, at the beginning, we talked a little bit about, people believing that elections had been stolen. It's not just 2020. A majority of Democrats in this country think the 2016 election was stolen, and I suspect a great many Democrats still think 2004 and 2000 were stolen as well. So this is a problem that has plagued both parties, the idea that they don't believe the outcome of elections, and the way we...
I'd like to clarify that point, though, as I just want to say, there were people in 2004 that thought voter suppression tactics were taking place in this state, which could still be a true statement. But what never happened after 2004 was an insurrection at the Capitol. In 2016, there was proof that there were external foreign agitators that were targeting certain types of... No. What I am saying and what Donald Trump said is not very different.
A lot of what gets missed in this is how thin the evidence actually is behind claims of widespread fraud. Independent research has repeatedly found non-citizen voting is extremely rare, sometimes measured in single-digit cases across millions of ballots. In one nationwide review, journalists found only a couple possible cases out of more than 137 million votes. At the same time, proposals tied to proof of citizenship rules could hit real voters much harder because studies show about 21 million eligible Americans don't have citizenship documents readily available if suddenly required to show them. Then there's the intimidation question, which people sometimes brush off as hypothetical. But election law in the US has long been shaped around preventing even the perception of armed federal presence near voting. Federal law historically bans deploying federal troops or armed forces at polling places because it risks coercion or fear among voters. And even recently, political rhetoric around potentially putting federal immigration enforcement near polls has triggered concern from election officials and lawmakers who worry it could suppress turnout, regardless of whether any formal plan exists. Another piece that strengthens Ashley Allison's side is the practical math of policy outcomes. When legislation is built around preventing something that research shows is vanishingly uncommon, but simultaneously creates barriers that affect millions of legitimate voters, the risk-benefit balance starts looking skewed. Even critics of fraud claims acknowledge that election confidence matters, but confidence usually comes from transparency, stable rules, and trust in results, not constantly changing requirements that make participation harder for ordinary citizens trying to vote legally.
That's the bipartisan conclusion of a congressional investigation.
My political
into the matter.
analysis is that a majority of Democrats think the 2016 election was stolen.
Hold on a second. What
By
Ashley just said.
poll after poll
Say a
after
majority
poll,
of Democrats? I've never heard
Dan,
that. Really?
if you walked into a Democrat
Well, no, but I'm asking
political
on the
dinner
poll.
tonight
I'm
and
asking-
said Russia did not steal the election, you'd be thrown out.
Can I be clear?
I
I walk
think it is
into
actually a good question where those numbers come from.
As a reliable source here, I walk into Democratic dinners every night, and just let me tell you, we're not talking about whether the
No,
2016
but if you
election.
polled it,
and
be
hold on,
honest.
hold
If
on
you
a
polled
second.
it, if you polled
Again,
it. Come on, guys.
I think it's
No,
really
if you phrase the question differently.
Because how many Democratic dinners have you been at lately, Scott?
I look at a lot of polls. I'm just telling you, Democrats believe the 2016 election was stolen by Russia.
No, my
And in
friend.
2000 and 2004,
let's
Democrats on the floor of the House tried to stop the
We're
electoral
headed into
college.
Let me tell you what a lot of Democrats believe and what a lot of Republicans believe, including the current Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who was a part of the process of looking into this, that Russia did, in fact, interfere in the 2016 election. That is not a conspiracy. It is not a hoax.
Do you think
It is
the election
bipartisan-
it was illegitimate?
Scott, I didn't say it was illegitimate.
because we didn't charge the Capitol.
It is a fact that Russia interfered in the
You all,
2016
everybody at this table
Scott,
knows a majority of
Scott,
Democrats think Russia
hang
stole
on
the
a
election.
second.
No.
Everybody
Talk
knows.
about,
That's right.
You can talk
Everybody
about
knows.
that, but we're talking about what Ashley is saying, which is that Democrats acknowledge something that also some Republicans acknowledge too, which is that Russia interfered. That is not to say that all Democrats believe that Hillary Clinton was duly elected, because if they did, then maybe they would have done what Trump supporters said.
There were a
on January
handful of
6th.
Democrats in 2016 who didn't vote to authorize certify the election.
Yeah, the Capitol either.
But just look at the numbers, right? It was 100 and something in 2020 of Republicans who were saying we're not going to certify the election. Now, you can argue Democrats started it, right? And look what they started and look what they sowed. Okay, you can make that argument. But based on the numbers, I don't think the majority of Democrats believe you're wrong. They may believe, if you rephrase the question, if you say,
All right,
do you think James Comey had an impact
Okay,
on Russia?
so the next, if you
After the
say
second,
that,
yeah.
I'm going to make a very provocative claim about Republicans, and then you're going to have to accept that.
Here's the thing that often gets lost in this. There's a major difference between saying foreign interference happened and saying an election result was fake. Multiple investigations, including a bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee probe, concluded Russia carried out a broad effort to influence the 2016 election. That's not partisan spin, it's intelligence and congressional consensus. And polling has consistently shown most Americans, including large majorities of Democrats, believe Russia interfered, which is different from claiming ballots were secretly changed or the result was illegitimate. Another reality is how both parties historically reacted after losses. Fact checks have shown that while some Democrats questioned campaign period events in 2016, they generally did not claim widespread vote count fraud or try to overturn certification at scale. That distinction matters when talking about democratic norms. Raising concerns about hacking, misinformation, or foreign propaganda is not the same as claiming millions of fake ballots existed without evidence. When you look at how institutions, courts, and state audits handle elections, the consistent pattern is that large-scale fraud claims fail under scrutiny because data and investigations simply don't support them. The broader point backing Abby Phillips' side is about trust versus narrative. Election confidence usually grows when leaders reinforce verified facts, even if their side loses. When rhetoric drifts toward hypothetical conspiracies or exaggerated threats, it tends to deepen public distrust instead of fixing real vulnerabilities like cyber threats or disinformation campaigns. If the goal is stronger elections, history shows transparency audits and bipartisan oversight build confidence far more effectively than constantly moving goalposts around who gets to vote or how results are accepted. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.